Hi everyone, I'm Jim. Welcome to this channel where we uncover the hidden psychology behind relationships, especially the complex dynamics of loving an avoidant partner. If you've ever found yourself apologizing just for having feelings, or constantly adjusting to fit someone's unpredictable rhythm, this video will help you understand why. Today's topic is both crucial and controversial: the hypocrisy of avoidant partners in relationships. This isn't an attack on anyone's character. It's a deep dive into the double standards and contradictions often displayed by individuals with avoidant attachment. And here's the surprising part. Most of these behaviors aren't rooted in malice, but in long-standing defense mechanisms. Why should you stick around until the end? Because we're not just exposing the problem, we're learning how to protect your well-being without becoming bitter or resentful. You'll discover what healthy boundaries look like, how to maintain your dignity, and most importantly, how to preserve your self-worth while loving someone who struggles with intimacy. This video is part of a series I've created with one clear mission: to empower you in love, so you can approach relationships with wisdom and emotional safety. If you're passionate about building healthy connections or simply curious about attachment dynamics, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's dive in. What makes avoidant behavior so full of contradictions, and how can you avoid getting trapped in their cycle? When we talk about the hypocrisy in avoidant behavior, the first thing to understand is that this isn't about deliberate deception or a manipulative scheme. In reality, it's a deeply ingrained psychological pattern rooted in self-protection. But here's the problem. It creates a series of contradictions that leave their partners feeling lost, confused, and often questioning their own worth. Avoidant individuals tend to demand an extraordinary level of patience and understanding from their partner. They want you to believe that their difficulty in expressing emotions doesn't mean they don't care, that their silence or withdrawal is just needing space, not a rejection of love. That sounds reasonable after all. Everyone needs space sometimes. The issue is that while they ask for infinite patience from you, they rarely offer the same in return. Your emotional needs, such as reassurance or a desire for closeness, are often labeled as too much or immature. This double standard forces their partners to constantly adjust, tone themselves down, and avoid pushing, while the avoidant gets to maintain all their limits without compromise. It doesn't stop there. Avoidants place a premium on personal freedom. To them, freedom means not being controlled, not having to respond to messages right away, and avoiding long-term commitments before they feel ready. Again, this sounds fair. Who doesn't value autonomy? But the contradiction appears when these same individuals expect you to be fully available the moment they decide to reconnect. When they want intimacy, they anticipate immediate access to your emotional availability, regardless of whether you're still hurting from their earlier withdrawal. In effect, the relationship operates on an unspoken rule. Their needs set the standard, yours are negotiable. What makes this dynamic particularly insidious is how they reframe their behaviors using seemingly positive language. Withdrawal becomes self-care, inconsistency is authenticity, and commitment avoidance is respecting personal freedom. These phrases sound enlightened and progressive, which can easily convince their partners that they are the ones being unreasonable or insecure. Meanwhile, the reality is that wanting clarity, connection, and stability is entirely normal in a healthy relationship. This packaging of hurtful behavior as something noble creates a subtle power imbalance. The avoidant maintains the image of being rational, independent, even emotionally intelligent, while the partner ends up shrinking, self-silencing, and constantly questioning themselves. Soon, you might hear your own thoughts saying, "Am I wrong for needing reassurance? Am I weak for wanting more closeness?" And when you start believing your basic needs are flaws, you begin to lose your voice, your boundaries, and ultimately your self-respect. This is why identifying this hypocrisy matters so much. Not to assign blame or demonize avoidance, but to see the reality clearly, to stop being blinded by high-sounding justifications. When you recognize that a healthy relationship cannot function on double standards, you reclaim the power to either ask for fairness or walk away before your self-worth is eroded beyond repair. After understanding the general concept of hypocrisy and avoidant behavior, we now need to dive deeper into the specific forms in which it manifests in real-life relationships. These are not just minor quirks, they are recurring patterns that create exhaustion and a deep sense of imbalance for the partner. By clearly identifying these forms of hypocrisy, you'll begin to understand why being with an avoidant often feels like living in a constant state of adjustment, while they remain in a position of privilege. Let's start with the most common and damaging one: space and pursuit hypocrisy. Avoidant individuals emphasize the importance of having personal space. When they feel overwhelmed, they expect you to respect their withdrawal without question or pressure. They frame it as self-care, as something healthy and necessary for emotional regulation. And you do what they ask you: step back, suppress your natural longing for connection, and tell yourself to be patient. But here's the contradiction. The moment they decide they want closeness again, they expect you to be instantly available and emotionally open, as if nothing happened. If you hesitate or maintain distance to protect your feelings, they often interpret it as punishment or evidence that you don't truly love them. In their narrative, their withdrawal is noble and justified, while yours is manipulative or cold. This is a glaring double standard, and if you don't recognize it, you'll unconsciously adapt to a rhythm that always favors them waiting, accommodating, and silencing your needs. This leads us to another major form of hypocrisy: vulnerability hypocrisy. Avoidants want you to accept that vulnerability is hard for them. They stress how difficult it is for them to share emotions and ask for your endless patience. And when they do open up rarely and selectively, they expect you to treat it as a sacred gift, something extraordinary. But here's the problem. While they demand absolute respect for their emotional limitations, they often view your need for emotional expression as excessive or burdensome. If you ask for reassurance or try to discuss feelings, you risk being labeled as needy, too much, or unstable. In other words, vulnerability becomes a privilege reserved for them, while your emotions are treated as a liability. Next is independence and commitment hypocrisy. Avoidants fiercely value personal freedom. They resist any form of control, dislike future-oriented discussions, and prefer to keep their options open. This sounds fair. Everyone deserves autonomy, but the contradiction arises when they expect you to remain loyal, committed, and emotionally invested regardless of their ambiguity. They can avoid defining the relationship or making long-term plans, yet still expect you to center your life around them. This creates an extreme imbalance. One partner enjoys the benefits of both independence and companionship, while the other carries the full weight of commitment without the security it should provide. Then we have empathy and understanding hypocrisy. Avoidants often expect you to deeply understand their psychological wounds, read books on attachment theory, listen to podcasts, and educate yourself on how to love them better. They want you to interpret every withdrawal through a compassionate lens, seeing their behavior as self-preservation rather than rejection. But do they show the same interest in understanding your attachment needs? Rarely. Empathy becomes a one-way street. You are expected to walk all the way to meet them, while they remain stationary, barely glancing at what you need to feel safe. Another subtle yet damaging form is communication hypocrisy. Avoidants often prefer indirect communication. They expect you to read between the lines, to pick up on subtle signals that they themselves may not articulate clearly. They frame this vagueness as being natural and believe you should intuitively understand it. But when you communicate openly and directly about your feelings, they may perceive it as overwhelming, controlling, or even manipulative. When they withdraw, it's called emotional regulation. When you express hurt, it's labeled as drama or emotional instability. Again, the rules of engagement are written to favor them entirely. Next comes accountability hypocrisy. Avoidants often want forgiveness without effort. When they hurt you by disappearing during conflict or dismissing your needs, they expect you to move on quickly without requiring change. They frame resolution as not dwelling on the past or focusing on the positive. But if you make a mistake, no matter how small, they may hold on to it as evidence of your insecurity or lack of maturity. This creates a dynamic where one partner carries the full responsibility for repair, while the other avoids both accountability and growth. Finally, we have self-care hypocrisy. Avoidants frequently justify distancing behaviors as self-care. They believe stepping back, cutting off communication temporarily, or emotionally withdrawing is necessary for their mental health, and perhaps it is. The hypocrisy lies in how they interpret your similar behaviors. If you pull back to protect yourself or take space to process feelings, it's often framed as punishment or proof that you don't truly love them. Their self-care is valid, yours is betrayal. Taken together, these forms of hypocrisy revolve around a central theme: emotional privilege for one, constant compromise for the other. It's important to stress again, this is usually not malicious. Most avoidants are not consciously plotting to harm you. These contradictions come from deeply rooted coping strategies developed in childhood. But the impact is real. A relationship structure that consistently prioritizes one person's needs while minimizing the other's. Over time, this erodes your boundaries, silences your voice, and chips away at your self-worth. This is why awareness matters. Recognizing these double standards doesn't mean attacking avoidance or labeling them as villains. It means seeing reality clearly so you can make empowered choices. A healthy relationship cannot operate on a system where one person's needs are always paramount. You deserve reciprocity, clarity, and mutual respect, not a lifetime of walking on eggshells to preserve someone else's comfort. Understanding these patterns is the first step toward reclaiming your balance, whether that means setting stronger boundaries or choosing to walk away. After exploring the major forms of hypocrisy and avoidant behavior, one truth becomes undeniable. These contradictions do not happen by chance. They form a consistent pattern that serves an unspoken rule: their needs matter more than yours. And it's this principle that creates some of the most damaging consequences for their partners. The first and most obvious effect is a profound imbalance in the relationship. When the avoidant partner continually prioritizes their right to withdraw, their need for secrecy, and their freedom from pressure while expecting you to remain loyal, patient, and perpetually available, you slowly develop a habit, adjusting yourself to fit their emotional rhythms. You learn to suppress your desire for connection. You convince yourself, "I shouldn't bother them," or "I just need to give them space." You wait for their texts. You wait for them to come back. And when they finally do, you open your arms without hesitation, pretending the distance never existed. But what's the real cost of always being ready? You lose the balance between giving and receiving. You give up your right to clarity and consistency, two essentials of healthy love. This imbalance doesn't stop at behavior. It creeps into your psychology. Over time, you start believing that your normal emotional needs like reassurance, closeness, and open communication are wrong or weak. Why? Because every time you express these needs, you're met with discomfort, silence, or labels like too much, clingy, or emotionally unstable. So, you adapt. You swallow your feelings. You stop saying, "I miss you," because you're afraid it will sound needy. You accept inconsistency as normal, even telling yourself, "This is what it means to be mature." And that's how power imbalance solidifies. You lower your standards to keep the relationship alive, while they make little or no effort to meet you halfway. This dynamic creates a toxic cycle. The more you try to understand them and accommodate their needs, the more disconnected you become from yourself. Many partners of avoidance fall into a pattern of self-doubt. Am I really too demanding? Am I not good enough? Is that why they pull away? You don't realize that what you want, care, clarity, and mutual effort, is completely normal and healthy. But once you internalize the belief that you're the problem, you start overcompensating, ignoring your own boundaries, and tolerating behaviors you once swore you'd never accept. The danger doesn't end with exhaustion. It escalates into something far more damaging: the erosion of self-worth. You begin to think love always requires one-sided sacrifice, that to keep someone, you have to shrink, silence yourself, and settle for breadcrumbs of affection. This belief is not only destructive to the present relationship, but also plants a dangerous seed for your future ones. If left unchecked, it rewires your expectations of love, teaching you to equate commitment with suffering and self-abandonment. Even worse, this dynamic often blinds you to the truth. Love should never cost you your dignity. A healthy relationship isn't about bending yourself into someone else's comfort zone. It's about creating a space where both people feel safe to be fully seen and fully heard. If you're constantly walking on eggshells, censoring your needs to avoid triggering their withdrawal, ask yourself, is this really love or survival? Recognizing these consequences isn't about demonizing avoidant partners or fueling resentment. It's about giving you back your power, the power to set boundaries, to demand fairness, and, when necessary, to walk away without guilt. Because here's the hard truth. Real love does not require you to compromise your self-respect to secure someone's presence. So if you've been stuck in a cycle of second-guessing yourself, bending over backward, and believing that your needs are flaws, let this be your wake-up call. You are not asking for too much. You are asking the wrong person. And the longer you trade self-worth for conditional affection, the further you drift from the kind of love that truly nourishes your soul. Now that you understand the nature of avoidant hypocrisy and the damage it causes, the next question is the most important one. How do you break free from this cycle? This isn't just about deciding whether to stay or leave. It's about reclaiming your power, your voice, and your self-worth in love. It's about building relationships that feel safe and mutual instead of draining and one-sided. Here are 4 foundational steps to guide you forward. 1. Recognize double standards and refuse to normalize them. The greatest power of an imbalanced relationship lies in its ability to make inequality feel normal. You start believing that your emotional needs are unreasonable or that your discomfort is a personal flaw. So the first step is clarity. Call things by their real name. Ask yourself, when they expect you to respect their need for space, do they also respect your need for connection? When they want you to understand their fears, do they make any effort to understand your feelings? When they call their withdrawal self-care, do they allow you the same without framing it as punishment? Recognizing these contradictions doesn't mean demonizing them. It means reminding yourself that love is not about accepting injustice in the name of patience. If a relationship only survives because you silence your needs, it's not love, it's self-erasure. 2. Set clear boundaries and demand mutual respect. Avoidant partners may dislike confrontation, but that doesn't mean you should live in ambiguity. Boundaries aren't ultimatums. They are commitments to yourself about how you will allow others to treat you. Start by asking, what do I need to feel emotionally safe? What are my non-negotiables? Then communicate them clearly. For example, I respect your need for space, but I also need clarity on when we'll reconnect, so I'm not left in uncertainty. I can be patient, but I can't stay in a relationship where silence becomes the default response to conflict. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're essential for emotional health. If you constantly lower your standards to maintain peace, the price you pay is your own dignity. 3. Understand that their wounds are not a free pass for endless sacrifice. One of the most dangerous traps for partners of avoidance is the rescuer mindset, believing that if you love them enough, wait long enough, and give enough, they'll eventually change. The truth is hard but liberating. You cannot love someone into becoming who they refuse to become. Yes, their attachment wounds explain their behavior, but they don't excuse it. Empathy is important, but empathy without boundaries turns into self-destruction. If they consistently avoid accountability, resist growth, and expect you to carry the emotional weight of 2 people, your compassion will only lead to burnout. Remember this. Understanding someone's pain doesn't obligate you to tolerate harm. You have every right to walk away from a relationship that repeatedly costs you your peace and self-respect. 4. Build relationships based on reciprocity, respect, and fairness. Healthy love is not a place where one person always wins while the other shrinks to fit. It's not about tiptoeing around someone's triggers while yours remain ignored. It's about 2 people creating an environment where both feel safe to express needs without fear of judgment. That means, if they need space, you respect that. If you need clarity or reassurance, they make an effort to meet you halfway. Fairness isn't about splitting everything 50-50 every time. It's about mutual effort and shared responsibility. When you realize that you are the only one adjusting, explaining, initiating repair, while they remain inflexible, stop and ask yourself, is this really love or am I just trying to survive? Breaking free from this cycle isn't easy. It requires unlearning deeply ingrained beliefs that love equals endurance, that infinite patience will one day be rewarded, that shrinking yourself is the price of being loved. The truth is this: love should never require you to abandon your self-worth. The right partner will not make you earn scraps of affection or treat your needs as flaws. They will meet you where you are not halfway after you've already walked the entire distance. And if they can't or won't do that, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away. Because at the end of the day, You don't just deserve love, you deserve love that feels safe, fair, and mutual. Love where you can breathe, where you can rest, and where you never have to apologize for wanting connection. So set the standard, rewrite the rules. Because your heart is worthy of more than surviving in someone else's comfort zone, you deserve to thrive in a space where your needs matter as much as theirs. We've come a long way from understanding the concept of avoidant hypocrisy, breaking down its forms, recognizing its impact, to exploring ways to break free from the cycle. And here's the core truth I want you to remember. Real love never asks you to sacrifice your self-worth for someone's presence. If you're in a relationship where double standards have become the unspoken rule, where you're constantly adjusting yourself just to maintain connection, pause and ask, is this really love or just survival in the gray zone? You have the right to love, but you also have the right to expect fairness. You have the right to walk away from any relationship that no longer honors your value. This isn't about blaming or labeling someone as the villain. It's about reclaiming ownership of your life. You deserve a love where you're heard, respected, and met, not one that requires you to silence, shrink, or erase yourself to keep the peace. If you're ready to start healing, begin with this. Set boundaries, expect reciprocity, and remind yourself daily what you're asking for is not too much. It's the bare minimum for healthy love. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this video. If this message gave you clarity or strength, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future content on attachment dynamics and building emotionally safe relationships. And if you want to share your story, drop a comment below. I'm here to listen and walk this path with you. Remember, you never need to make yourself smaller to be loved. True love is where you can be fully yourself and still be chosen every single day.